All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Oregairu Season 2, Episode 8.
Well,
wow.
This is a little bit of a predicament we're in here, isn't it, Hachiman?
It's a whale of an ordeal.
Yeah, you don't need to keep forcing yourself to show up. Yeah.
If we, you know, if all this took for us to fall apart, then maybe we weren't that close to begin with. It's funny hearing the words that he used to Hayama kind of given...
Come back to bite him?
Given to him here when she would have had no idea that he said that to them, so...
Yeah. But, Hachiman, that moment, something good almost happened, right?
The crazy thing is that in some ways, we could probably go back and reanalyze that scene a ton, and there was probably, like, a chance in 50 that it went that way. Yep. But I think because of too many previous iterations of things going certain ways, there was almost no chance he would find it. It's like a line in chess that's like a computer would find.
Well, and it's specifically Hachiman's blind spot.
Well, but it's also just it's too deep. It's too many layers of indirection for him. Yeah. And this makes sense as to what would be Yukino's response here. So
right, that's why the drama pops, because it's what these characters have to do, because that's kind of who they are, that's where they're at.
Right, and this has been building for a while.
It has,
you know.
Yeah.
So now that we are here, okay.
That was the last thread, it's gone.
You've got a unique situation that will, of course, pop up with Yui, because I could see her acting out because of this. In a way that might not be the most mature way. Let's say.
At the very least, she'll probably disagree with your sentiments on the matter.
I could see her being so completely third party in this, and that it might be something where
we'll have to see.
We'll have to see. Yeah. And we've got a lot of the characters that have been given extra focus this season with Hachiman, so they're going to be ones where he'll at the very least be either interacting with them, or they'll get opportunities to be involved, maybe on some kind of a commentary basis. But I really, my biggest one I want to see whose commentary comes into play in this is Komachi's. I very much want to see this get brought up in the slightest bit. However, it might not.
It might not. It's true. Yeah.
Y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, then come back here for the discussion.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm really happy now.
I could not cry during that. Like, I know it was an emotional, like, super emotional scene and everything, but I was just so excited because this is huge. This is huge. Like, Hachiman actually allowed himself to be vulnerable with them, right? And it was raw. It was messy. It hurt them, you know, right? But that's progress, right? Now they actually have that genuine connection, right? Because
no, they don't.
Well,
no, they don't.
They're willing to build. Start of it.
They're willing to build, and they're willing to take time with it.
Right. Yep.
That's the thing. Is that this is a process.
Yes.
And for any of you that have been like even remotely in a situation similar to this, you know that it's not magically like possible just because you talked about it.
Right, it doesn't just instantly transform and happen, but the thing is that this is the beginning of the journey, right? And they're a million miles farther than anywhere they were up till now because that first step has been taken.
Yeah. And I am so impressed with what the show did here. This episode starting it off with one of the best Hiratsuka conversations by far. So Hiratsuka being here, so impactful. Because this would not have happened if not for her. So Hiratsuka is in some ways the MVP of this whole episode, even though you could give it to any of the three.
I also want to give it to Hachiman because
that's the one that makes the most sense. I just wanted to say that Hiratsuka is the instigator for making this happen.
This is the fuel and everything for the the men just have terrible taste in women, line. Like it's because Hiratsuka, you were the hero. You were the knight in shining armor on the horse, coming in to save the day.
Genuine connection with him.
Yep, and you could tell that when she asked him, how are things? And he was like, terrible, right? Or I can't remember the exact word he said, but he said that things were bad. Yeah, and that's not something that he will often do. And even though after that, he then went into the, I'll talk about the festival and all that, that kind of openness is something that we have not seen from him with anyone other than Kamachi. So...
Well, and Hiratsuka.
Well, right. But until now, it was...
Right. I know that, but he has been kind of open with Hiratsuka in the past.
Sure, but I would say
not as much. But
this was still progress for him, and that's why
it's because he's growing and changing throughout the show.
He's growing and changing. He just got dealt the wallop to end all wallops, right? Like he really got broken down by everything that happened in the previous episode. Right. And I want to applaud Hachiman for having the humility basically to realize that things aren't going well, and I do actually need to talk about it.
Even though he used the truth to mask the real reason why things are going badly.
Right. Yep.
Oh my God. I cannot tell you how realistic and well written and also relatable that is, in that I very much have an issue with basically the way people use mildly truthful things to deceive others, basically. Because it's very common for people to stretch the truth, basically, or to give the truth but change something in the context so that you end up trying to, kind of manipulate the receiver's kind of information. And that was something that he was trying to do here by basically being like, yes, I'm being honest. And that relieves a little bit of his own stress and that things aren't going well.
Right.
But he's not going to talk about the thing that's really bugging him. So he ends up bringing all the details of the real problem that's going on with the Christmas event.
Yep.
And yet we know that he's comfortable with Hiratsuka in multiple ways because he was, one, willing to just jump in her car and spend time with her. Two, once she's like, I'm going to take a detour, he just goes to sleep.
Okay.
He's comfortable with her. He's not trying to guess for some ulterior motive of what she's doing here.
Sure.
He feels safe with her.
Yeah.
She ends up, getting out here and stuff with him, and he's not questioning why they're here or anything like that. He's just like, okay, I guess we're going to spend time talking about something.
And when he starts talking about the event, the festival and all that, the things that he brings up, yes, are technical, literal things that are problems within regards to the festival, but he's also, and whether this is intentional or not, right, because we don't see inside Hachiman's head here at the beginning of the conversation, he is discussing the issues that he is also having with Yukino and Yui. Right, it's all under the guise and the pretense and the mask of the festival, but whether subconsciously or otherwise, right?
I think subconsciously.
Yeah, it could totally be subconsciously. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised though if because he seemed to be. He was before Hiratsuka showed up, he was very much contemplating, what had just happened, kind of. So I wouldn't put it past him that it could have been something where he was talking about it without talking about it.
Well, okay. So they brought up a mechanic in this story that is a real world mechanic that explains that potentially, and that is that people's feelings and their thoughts don't line up. So
sure,
what's happening here is his feelings are coming out through his words,
right?
But his thoughts are focused on a different event. So right now, his feelings and thoughts are maybe a little bit doing this,
right? And
where they're not synchronizing up.
Oh yeah, and this is I feel like the root cause of Hachiman's hypocrisy.
Okay.
Because Hachiman prides himself on being very sort of unbiased, cold, calculating, and observational with regards to how he perceives the world, right?
Because he generally is.
Because he generally is.
Yeah.
But the reason why it doesn't work, and the reason why
it's not
holding it in such
all,
high regard. Yeah, it's definitely not perfect, but the reason why I'm holding it in such high regard is such a problem for him, right? It's a crutch that is seriously crippled him. is because he's not actually addressing the emotional side of things, right? Because since it hurt him in the past, he's taken that, he's boxed it up, he's put it in a vault, and it's just buried and hidden, right? And then with his observations, yes, of course, he's very technical, he's very proficient at being able to read a situation and tell what's going on. But there's a whole side of things that he is not perceiving / not willing to perceive because it's the nope, that stuff happens in the vault and that never gets out. Right? I keep that there because that's where it's safe, that's where it doesn't hurt me. And as a result of this, he has been able to quite effectively avoid getting hurt so far, but that also means because he's not willing to get hurt because he's not willing to get hurt, he ends up hurting the people around him, even though he's not actually trying to hurt them. He's trying to not hurt them, but that's
another problem in and of itself.
Right, exactly, because then you're getting sterile and surgical with people rather than actually having a genuine connection. So
one of the things that this whole kind of thing just feels really just powerful with is it feels like he's coming to almost a realization of sorts that he's a lot like Hayama in a lot of ways. He's the person who's basically realizing so much. He's kind of propped up a clique around him, a group that he's keeping almost a little bit in this like kind of lukewarm kind of connection there, where everything is controlled and measured, and he's got a good kind of handle on things, but he's not like Hachiman's not really being vulnerable with them. The most basic form of this is something that I very much relate to, which is just asking for help. Typically, guys who have very big pride issues, just in general, are
hesitant to say the least.
Well, yes, but they are. You can tell because they will very rarely genuinely ask for help. When they do ask for help, sometimes it's not really asking for help.
Right.
It's a way of being like, let us partner with this. But it is not saying that I am inadequate. I need help.
Right. It might be something like, hey, can you hold the flashlight for me?
Exactly.
You know, but it's not, because that's something where it's something that literally under no circumstances could they be capable of doing the thing. They don't have 3 hands, right?
Exactly.
But when it's something where it's like, oh no, theoretically I could be able to do this, and because of limitations and maybe failings of myself, I can't. Then, well...
And the other part of it is the revealing of the emotion behind the asking for help. Which is what he ends up doing later in the episode, which is where I felt like this is like an emotional healing episode. For those of you that have had similar issues like with what Hachiman has been going through, and it's not necessarily like the exact same thing, but you recognize a part of what Hachiman is going through in yourself. This is legitimately good shit that they went through here, because Hiratsuka basically noticed really quickly, because let's be real, she's an adult. This is one of my favorite things about Hiratsuka.
She's walked the walk.
Right. She just has, what, like, at least 5 years or whatever, more experience. And she just recognizes the verbiage, can able to read a little bit of the emotion that's coming off of him, and just goes, oh, this is pretty easy. I'll just ask him some questions and prod and it'll just pop right out. It will be really easy.
Pop a drink and, you know, let's talk.
And I love how she uses like encouragement and affirmation to make him contradict her.
Because it's something where
it's genius. Genius.
By basically, in order to point out his Achilles heel, she specifically states what he's good at, right? and he's like, yes, I agree. I am good at that.
He immediately goes to contradict her in the episode.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, she's like, wow, you're like, well done. Like, you have quite the talent for figuring out what people are thinking. And he's like, that's immediately goes to clarify, like, that's not. And it's basically the whole thing where she then like realizes, oh, I was on the money. He's about to contradict me and add some kind of clarification stuff. And be like, well, that's where I'm failing right now. And she's like, I'll show you.
No, you're not failing there.
You're failing in an adjacent parallel way there. And it's regarding how you understand how people feel.
Because you're trying to use a hammer to make, to sculpt a statue, right? It's not going very well for you,
God.
Your hammer's great, but you don't need it here. Now, maybe theoretically, if you're very determined, you could flip that hammer around, spend a lot of time, and eventually get something that looks like a statue, right? And then he does that, you know, overnight, right?
Right.
But you are very much your strength is a weakness right now.
Right. And also, I love how she flips this around eventually to showing how much he, well, she used the word care, but I'm just going to use the word love. He loves the two of them. Like, it's a very real, genuine love for them, which is why the show has the romantic subplots, because each of them unlocked certain things within him that have been evolving and growing since the earliest episodes, basically. So his evolution really is because of the genuine love and care that he has for them. So here, now, when this has rustled him and rattled him so much, it's because that's still there. It hurts. It's basically brought him to this point where he's totally, well, I would say exhausted. Like, the fact that he slept, the fact that he had that just moment where he just sat on the bench and just was like, you know when you have a cold sweat, but you're in a cold environment? Like
yes, it's weird.
Yeah, that's probably what he was experiencing once Yukino left. Like, just that, like that stress sweat of just, wow. But he's like, it's cold out there as well. So it's just his whole, everything's out of sorts. I can't.
So
I love this episode.
This episode, I feel like, is also a great example of why I love this show. Because, yes, it is a rom-com, right?
Totally.
Romantic comedy snafu and all that.
A dramedy, if you will.
A dramedy, for sure. Yeah. And I love it. It's great. It does a great job of that.
Yeah.
But with regards to Hachiman, why I love him as a character so much is that he is the most difficult main character, maybe, to have as a romance protagonist.
Sure, yeah.
Because it's something that he won't allow himself to do. Right? For very deep-rooted reasons.
Right. Not for just, I'm blind to the fact that there are people that are interested in me.
But it's that I have hobbled myself. I do not allow myself to actually love, even though I still do, but I don't deal with that because I haven't in a very, very long time, right?
People showing that genuine care me have to have some kind of ulterior motive.
Right. So that makes it really complicated. And this is all his struggle of trying to overcome that, but of course he's stubborn, so he doesn't. When I was doing therapy at one point, I remember getting really frustrated because I felt like I wasn't making progress, right? And it's like, okay, come on, I'm doing the things, I'm trying to work on this. Why am I not changing, right? And my therapist ended up giving me the example of a rocket ship that's trying to leave atmosphere.
Okay.
They keep the rocket ship coupled to the ground while the engines are going in order to let it build up speed so that way it can actually support its own weight and escape gravity and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then they let the restraints go and then the rocket goes up and it's awesome. Hachiman has been in that situation here, right? In this show, where he doesn't even realize that he's doing it, right? That
he's grown and changed a lot.
He doesn't realize that he's holding himself back, and he doesn't realize that he's igniting the thrusters. But it's happening, right? But there is a lot of movement that is just there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not able to actually go anywhere. This is whenever people talk about how like the change happened in a day, what they mean by that usually is that it took them 7 years or however long it took to get to the point
decouple the thrusters.
To get to the point where they could make the change in that day. And that's what happened here. Hachiman has had a bunch of options and choices and chances for that potentially to happen along the way. But the thrusters weren't built up enough, right? He wasn't at that point with himself as a person where he would actually be able to support letting everything go and actually be able to fly, right? He would, and that's why he didn't, right? Because he was scared. He's like, I don't want this rocket ship to tip over, right? That could be a bad thing, right?
And I also don't want the thrusters that I let off to affect the people around me.
And that's what's so beautiful about it is that Hachiman, you don't really have full control over whether the thrusters start to fire.
Yeah.
That's like
you don't. There's this thing called an environment, and you're in it.
Yep.
There are people in it with their own will,
right,
and stuff. So,
and there's a part of you that realizes that this environment is good for you, right?
Yes.
That firing the thrusters, that's what you were meant to do, right? But the logical part of your brain, the untrusting part of your brain, the part of your brain that got hurt, right?
Yeah. Well, that's trying to protect you.
Right, that's trying to protect you because psych, it wasn't actually your brain that got hurt.
Because you get hurt when other people you care about get hurt.
Exactly.
Especially when you're the one that's hurting them.
Yep. Yeah. But now this is happening, and the people around you, he's realizing, yes, because they're close to him, the exhaust from the fuel is starting to hurt them. And it's like,
it's disruptive.
It's disruptive. I don't like that. Maybe they should just back away.
Yeah.
Right? Then it'll all be better. No, that's not how it works.
And I'm doing it for their sake, right?
Right. But what they really want to do is they want to fly with you, right?
Or even better, they want to suffer through the fumes and help give you some lift.
Sure. Yeah.
Like that's one of the things that I've found over and over and over in my personal experience is that anytime you start to fire the thrusters, there are going to be a couple people who will distance themselves.
Sure.
And they, the really mature ones, they'll let you know that they're doing it. They're like, hey, by the way, this is
just something I got to do.
Just something I got to do for me. Usually has nothing to do with you. It's just entirely a thing of like, oh, well, hold on, I'm going to adjust things a little bit. Totally fine. That's a very reasonable, mature, adult way to handle things. We're dealing with kids here for one, so I'll keep that in mind. But this is one that I've seen just go all the way down to, to the kids level because there's this, I don't even think it's empathy. I think it's just the desire to encourage. I don't know what the right word here is, but there are so many times when people see others that are going through that thruster tension with the ground and they're still coupled, and they don't know when the person is going to feel like they can go and press the button and achieve liftoff. So what they'll do is they'll come into the sphere, get hurt potentially because they're too close to the thing there, and they'll be like, but this act, just standing here and just being here, letting you know that I'm willing to deal with this while you achieve liftoff, is me just trying to show that I care. Because there is a very positive feedback loop when you sacrificially love someone, even if it's something that's not healthy. Like, this is something where I've seen other people kind of do that thing where they'll do it in the kind of the immature way. There's a good intention most of the time, I would say. But I'm not going to go into math here. There are a lot of the times where there is a good intention behind it. But what they're basically just trying to say is that they care about you. It's not really that complicated. It's just, I want to be there while you're in that moment there. Yeah. Sometimes it's for a selfish reason because they want to ride your wave or whatever. But let's not think about that. It's usually pretty simple. But in that moment, if you're like Hachiman in this case, you can really throw water on their fire that they're trying to add to your ignition by being like, no, stand back.
Right.
I could hurt you. And it's really egotistical because it's basically saying that they're so fragile, they're so weak, that there's no way that they could survive my blast, my ignition.
Also, it's really fucking arrogant to be able to believe that you could keep someone from getting hurt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Maybe minimize it? Possibly. Sure. Right?
That's why Hiratsuka points in hard on the fact that it's all about whether or not you're aware of the fact that you're doing it.
Yeah.
And that you tell, show, communicate that you're aware of it, because that then shows that you care enough to have noticed it. Now, people aren't perfect, so they're still not going to notice it 100% of the time. But this is not a one and done kind of thing. Most relationships in general, people suffer through a multitude of hurts over the course of the relationship. It is a process, exactly. And when relationships aren't built in a day and they don't end in a day.
And when it comes right down to it, now this is maybe a bit specific and has my own personality tinge on it, so take it with a grain of salt.
Well, totally. I mean, we're different, so we can round each other out in that respect. So go for it.
People like getting hurt.
Go for it, yeah.
So very counterintuitive, right? And there are some ways that could be taken, which I don't mean, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. Go for it.
But without the ability to get hurt, and there is no value to the good, right? It's the very fact that you're trusting the person to say, yeah, place the knife right over my heart, right? I know that your hands aren't perfectly steady, right? And that you will damage me, right? But you know what? It's worth it.
Yeah.
There
comes a point where people have enough relationships of convenience that they want something painfully genuine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a story that I'm going to share later on in the discussion, so if you're interested in that kind of thing, stick around. I know that most people cancel out the discussion kind of time by about, like, now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to save it for then. But there's something really powerful about, and I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but I'm gonna rope back to this. But it's something really powerful about Hachiman asking for a genuine connection, and I'm gonna talk about that. But what Hiratsuka kind of foreshadows with that here is that Hachiman's strength is in his ability to process information through his observations. Now, those are two separate things. When you observe information, you apply it through a filter almost immediately. There are very few people, in fact, there's almost no one really that should be able to do this, but to take information entirely at face value.
And in fact, with Hachiman, the way that he interprets information, he is putting it through a filter of filter out all the emotions, usually, right?
Yes.
And yes, it is very unbiased when it comes to the technical side of things,
lot of
but
it
that's
is,
not all that exists, so you are really not getting the full picture.
Right. And it's the acknowledgement that you're not getting the full picture, but you knowing which parts of the picture you're not getting that separates, I would say, the people who are good at interpreting their observations versus those that are just like, how would I say this? Because I would say I'm kind of like this in my bad kind of way, which is that I will basically take the die and apply my modifier of,
whatever
perception or whatever, and roll, and believe that roll was always a success. Like pretty much like most of the time. And that's really dangerous if you're doing this in relationships.
Sure.
So I will try to avoid doing that in relationships. But in like something that's impersonal, there can be some value in there because it allows you to go beyond the initial bit of data and ask questions about your interpretation. So Hiratsuka brings up the idea that if feelings were something that you could actually understand because you calculated it all, then they would have been digitized long ago.
Right. And then you just have like a little like thumb drive or something that you plug into your computer and it's, here's emotion,
Right. But Hiratsuka doesn't claim to have some monopoly or understanding herself on the matter. It's the idea that she is showing Hachiman rather than telling him here, this is where we as human beings lie. Is that not lie, but where we lay, if that makes sense. We're right in that point where we constantly are observing this thing that cannot be fully understood. So it is not about achieving perfect understanding. It is about being aware of what you do understand and what you don't. What you know and you know what you don't know.
Right, and then trying to take the things that you know you don't know and then adding that back in as best you can.
Yeah. I actually want to bring up something that's rather interesting in this conversation here. Now, if we take this bit with Hiratsuka just at face value here, she starts to talk about herself here.
Right. I bet it's because I keep miscalculating things that I can't get married.
Now, she was just earlier dropping some of the biggest wisdom bombshells here about this whole thing with human emotion, right?
Yep.
Now, she also then immediately turns to a bit of self-deprecation so that she's not coming off as arrogant, prideful, or condescending to Hachiman.
Right.
But in doing that, she then lets out a little bit of her emotion regarding how she feels about feelings and that makes a judgment call that's not self-deprecating in the kind of humor kind of way, but just like a matter-of-fact thing of this is where I'm a bit self-aware. Now, Hachiman has had his problem in that he doesn't want to hurt anyone. So he immediately tries to give her a pick-me-up, but it's so genuine. It's so genuine that it actually breaks through to her here.
Right.
Because
and surprises her.
It surprises her. Now, he's full on interrupting her. She was about to go on a story here, rambling.
Yeah.
This is where Hiratsuka's imperfections were coming in, is that she has kind of brought the conversation away from the stuff here with Hachiman to talking about an event. She's trying to keep it casual, keep it light, keep it a little bit, fresh, genuine even. And he basically falls back a little bit on one of his weaknesses, which is trying to make everyone feel okay around him. But I think what he's also doing here is he's taking her advice that she just gave him literally to heart, in that he's like, wait a minute, this is a spot of really like strong emotion for you. So I'm gonna
address that.
I'm gonna say something here that I feel like will cut like right through to the quick of it here. And the fact that she genuinely
like full on blushes,
like full on just, oh, that was really sweet.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. You and I like to banter, but I felt that. Like, I felt that here. And then he, of course, gives his thought process regarding the whole.
Yeah. If I'd been born 10 years earlier and all that. Yeah. And it's something where the I love how this scene went, because the whole idea of the you know, having the older female character where it's like, you know, you have the banter with the MC and then, you know, and all that stuff, right? And then, he says something that's complimentary and then she blushes, right?
She has her tsundere moment. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's the kind of thing that I would, I have a really hard time buying most of the time, because it feels like it's just sort of, throwing it in there for the sake of having it in is like wish fulfillment, whatever, etc. Playing to the trope, right?
Yeah, it's a trope, yeah.
But in this situation here, if we look at what happened, it is a trope, and yet it adds a lot to the scene, because it's Hachiman showing that Hachiman is learned, but it's also something where it's coming off of, yes, Hiratsuka being, you know, wise beyond her years and having all that stuff that she's giving to Hachiman. And then potentially even ruining it by then diverting into a personal anecdote that could make it so that he doesn't actually get the chance to have the things that she had just said sink in, right? However, Hachiman is very fast on the uptake, right?
Yeah, very quick.
And because of everything that's happened before now, Hachiman is vulnerable enough in order to accept the things that she's saying and let them sink in. And then he ends up actually addressing the concern that he's seeing that she has, right? Because she doesn't have full control over it, right? It's starting to rear its ugly head and everything. And just the other day I went to a wedding. Nobody has taste in women, right? He's communicating that he understands. He's addressing the matter at hand in the way that it needs to be addressed, or in the best way that he can, that she'll receive, right?
Yeah, which is him kind of trying to make sure she doesn't get hurt.
Right.
But it's a little bit of his own thing there, yeah.
But the fact that she then blushes and is like, oh, that says a lot about how big of a problem this maybe is for her.
Oh,
because as much as it's done, as much as it's done for gags, right?
Oh, yeah,
and like, oh yeah, you know, never get married, and then she punches him in the gut, right?
Yeah.
No,
well, yeah.
Yeah. This is a sore spot for her, right?
Very sore, yeah. Yeah, of course.
And then immediately he gives her the encouragement, and it means an awful lot.
So she then gives him thanks with a bit of a tip, and I love that she says, I'll give you a hint, singular, and then gives him like 3 hints.
Right.
Like, it's just okay, when you think about something, you know, you make sure you focus on the right point. She talks to him in a logical manner. She basically doesn't try to use language that he won't understand, basically. Like, I use basically like 3 times there, but I'm trying to say that she's talking at his level. So even though she was starting to lose track of her own kind of train of thought and talk about kind of anecdotes and stuff, she's now back in and she's speaking Hachiman's language here. So she understands enough about him to be able to see that this will work. He will see it correctly, at least for the most part here. I love. Yeah, I love that little bit with regards to the hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, that was just wonderful.
Yeah,
like
just
because,
speaking hypothetically. Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. Of course. You know, because it's the acknowledgement of, okay, now that I've said the general rules and things like that, and you've been able to take those in. Now let's go back into the territory that you're comfortable with, right? Since you've got a, you know, downright surgical precision with these specific tools, you know, you're very good with this hammer. All right, let's start using this hammer again. You know, if it was someone else, hypothetically speaking, you know, like remove yourself from the situation. How would you want to deal with emotions and things like that? Like the fact that she was like, think of all the possibilities and then just bulldoze your way, working, like eliminating all the ones that it's not, right? And then that's how you'll be able to, and then that thing that you can't figure out, that's emotion. It feels like when scientists try and measure black holes and stuff, right? And it's like, well, you can't actually like measure them directly because they just suck up all the light and everything and there's just nothing.
Right.
But if you look around them,
yeah,
then you can actually start to measure them, you know? And it's like, hey, do that for emotion. There you go. Here's a
find out what it's not.
Right, find out what it's not. Here's a workable tool that you can use with your regular way of doing things to be able to get progress in this area.
What I love about this is she basically gives a framework for how people will always hurt each other. So you can find the hurt if you look long enough.
Right. Because it's almost definitely there.
It's just definitely there. And then it's just the question of, well, you know, you care about them. So what part of this is going to end up being, well, the thread that you can pull to find a solution. And
I love the thing that she said of like, hey, if you're not wanting to hurt them, like, what was it? It was like, if you don't want to hurt them, then it's not a question of whether or not you're hurting them. It's a question of why is it that you want to make sure you don't hurt them.
Well, no, that's conflating two different bits. There's a bit where she's talking about, you know, it's not about, it's not what you should be thinking about with regards to avoid hurting them by pushing them away. Just wondering why you don't want to hurt them, and just because you care about them. But then later, she brings up, it's you know, someone you don't care about, you won't even notice that you're hurting them. But when you're feeling you're hurting somebody, it shows that you do care about them.
Right.
It's that awareness difference that's really important there. And a lot of people, I think, who have experienced really strong, just emotional moments in their life, like, I mean, really, really strong ones where you never forget those moments, it usually centers around the awareness of whether or not the person that's involved in this with you is, like, how aware they are that they're hurting you or that they hurt you or that they are going to hurt you or something like that. And the catharsis, like the big moment of relief, comes when they communicate that awareness and then communicate something in a promise or some kind of way regarding the point after that. But then the negative side of it is their lack of ability to see how they're hurting you, because it communicates some way in which they must not care about you because they don't see.
Yeah, that is one of the things that can be really tough is when people are wired differently, because everyone is, right? But but if it's especially like, you know, your blind spots are not don't help each other, you know, where it's like, okay, you when you don't share blind spots, right, then if you do work together, it can be great because then you complement each other,
right?
But when it comes to those blind spots, something that's obvious for you might not be obvious for them, and then it can get to the point where you're thinking, okay, is it actually just that this is a blind spot for them, or is it that they don't actually care enough about me in order to, you know, have this matter?
And you can't know.
You can't know unless you talk to them.
Unless you communicate.
Right? Unless you communicate.
And they communicate back.
Yep.
So I love also that she brings up the idea of where there's a possibility that because you look out so much for people, you end up missing out on things. Basically, you sterilize some aspect of the relationship, but it's not always a bad thing. That's not something to feel sad about. If anything, you should consider a source of pride. And that's something where he cares about them so much that he's actually missing out on things,
right?
Because he's misapplying his care. Now, she brings up the idea that, you know, this is, you know, something that's hard. Yeah, but it's not impossible. After all, I could do it. And yeah, I love that he kind of has this moment of realization before kind of going, but that doesn't mean everyone can. You know what he just realized right there, and what she was doing right there, right?
She cares about you.
Yeah, she cares about you. This is something that she's doing here, Hachiman.
Right.
Because she cares about you. So you, like, like, I mean, yeah, I care about you too, but like, I mean,
and then he has to look away, right?
Doesn't mean everyone can. Yeah, doesn't mean I can. I mean,
yeah,
you know, it's still really tough.
And Hachiman, that's a good question to think about. Can everyone do that? But maybe a better question is, will everyone do that?
Yeah.
Because the question of whether someone can, well, who can say?
Yeah.
But you never know until you try. And who knows? Maybe you could.
I love that she also presents him with a lofty goal. Now, this is something that I think is a very genius, but also potentially dangerous way to handle the ending of the conversation, is that she frames things with regards to time, and there being some urgency with regarding to the present, meaning everything. Now, I am probably what is known as a lazy person with regards to my relationship with urgency. There's a lot of people who will get more stuff done because their relationship with urgency is one that they'll like, I have to do it now, now.
The Hamilton thing of writing like you're running out of time. Yeah,
exactly. Now, that is something that I would say, when handled properly, is way better than what I'm talking about here, which is that when you have people who you care about, but you don't know how to make things better when things are getting worse, there is always the opportunity to act now. But seeking the result from your actions in the present is just nonsensical.
Oh.
So one of the things that people can get twisted here is the action and the effort versus the result of understanding and a genuine connection and all that. So what she's doing here is basically saying, yeah, set it out. Look ahead. This doesn't have to happen here. In fact, it doesn't even have to be you. Now, she's talking about this from the standpoint of the service club of helping Yukinoshita be able to come out of her shell and become a more healthy, rounded, mature person. Now, that's also part of the reason why she sent him there, so that he could get the same thing.
Yeah.
But we're the ones having this conversation, so let's focus right here. But you don't have to get everything right now. They don't have to get everything right now. Eventually, someday, somebody, someone else even, might help her in this way. But I want it to be you, Hachiman. I want you to be the one to do it. It's now or never.
Right. And all you have is now.
Yeah. So then he spends the whole night. He gets caffeinated. He starts thinking. He starts tapping into his strength. He uses what he can, and he figures out that there's really only a couple ways he can do this, but they all involve him going to the club, humbling himself, asking for help, being vulnerable with his emotions, and just letting it out.
Right.
He doesn't know what it's going to look like.
And one of the reasons why I was so... man, I loved everything about that scene. Like, it didn't even feel like there were complications that arose up. Like even when Yukino was like, no, that I couldn't feel daunted by that, right? Because it's like that's something that had to happen, right? Because of course she doesn't trust him, right? Because this is something that he has never actually done before. He's never really asked them for help. So the fact that he's asking them for help now, he's not really asking them for help. He just wants to have the consequences of his previous actions be wiped away, right?
Yeah.
So, she more or less, I mean, she doesn't say that, but, she answers in the negative, right? And then Yui ends up being like, hold on, you're not being fair. And it's like, well, yes, but he hasn't necessarily been fair up till now. So, like, we're all not being fair equally. It's great, right? And then...
the niceties have dropped.
Right. And then Hachiman gets the opportunity to do the thing that he has truly never done until now.
Yeah.
And that's being emotionally vulnerable. Right? And that, yes, it's playing dirty.
Yes,
right?
But it's something that is the key to unlocking a whole bunch of other things, and yet I will just say it is also one of the most dangerous things you can do in a relationship.
Sure.
Now, this is the area where I think you can draw a lot of personal experience from with the area of emotional vulnerability, and I think anyone that's lived long enough has had multiple experiences on the spectrum of response with regards to emotional vulnerability. You do not always get the same response when you're emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah, and that's why we value it, because it's dangerous.
It's very
you're not
risky.
You're not just having them like hold the knife over your heart. You're actually like pushing it in.
Yeah, you're like, here's the spot.
Yeah.
Let's over here.
Right between the ribs. Let's let it just sit there.
And you're even like tying your hands behind your back. Yeah,
right, exactly.
It's
like if they you know, they could really seriously hurt you. But you know what? You trust them. You're willing to take the risk.
See, that's the thing. One of the things that I very much am a proponent. I encourage emotional vulnerability, basically. And over the course of this channel's history, you've probably seen that that's something Jacob and I very much value. But like the reason why I value it specifically is because there is honesty in it that is not that it's undeniable, but it demands a response in some way.
Sure.
So when you're honest, but you basically kind of kill the conversation, one of the things that I really don't like about that is it basically says, hey, I think that everything here is adequate, and I don't necessarily want anything to change here. What the emotional vulnerability side does is it basically says, I would like to give you the steering wheel. Here is an area in which I am basically willing to have things move and change and get hurt and grow and whatever. But I would like to invite you to be a part of that. Now, that is also something that is dangerous because you're giving them some measure of responsibility.
Yeah.
Now, they do not have to do that. They can choose to be like, oh, I totally get it. Yeah.
And
give it is a response.
Yep.
I will tell you, most people, when you're emotionally vulnerable with them in some way, it's very rarely a non-response. What you'll get is basically a minimal response, which is some kind of like, oh, yeah, I had no idea, yada, 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 yada. Make everything back to normal because this is uncomfortable kind of response. Or, you know, something on the other end of where it's more extreme, which could be positive or negative, of course. But I almost view it not in terms of a positive or negative response, but in terms of how extreme of a response of vulnerability are they going to match with it.
Right. It's very difficult to give a neutral response in response to emotional vulnerability. Like,
oh really?
Yeah, I would say it's like a not neutral in like not positive or negative, but like in a non-response kind of way. I would say it is actually difficult, and a lot of people as a result
into that,
won't do that because you're if you're giving them basically the a key to some place of you, some aspect of your heart, right?
Yeah.
That is there's a lot of pressure that kind of comes along with that, especially if not necessarily from the person doing the emotional vulnerability, but just as a result of the person realizing this person is trusting, this other person right here is trusting me an awful lot. I don't want to screw up, right?
Yeah.
And so my kind of philosophy on emotional vulnerability, I guess, is that the most that they will do, the most neutral response is that they will actively try and kind of diffuse the situation, because it's uncomfortable for them. But even doing that's
pretty neutral.
But like what I see is like the true neutral response is I feel like you don't really have to worry about that most of the time. Maybe there are some instances.
Can I bring up an instance that's very common in my experience?
Yeah.
I disagree entirely that it's hard to do this because people I think do this reflexively. Yeah. Yeah. It's not in those exact words.
Sure.
But it's in the whoa.
Right. It's saying
I didn't give you permission to do this in front of me.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that is a very antagonistic towards the emotional vulnerability response.
Right.
But it is also something of where they are, and I would say not easily, but reflexively. Just nope.
Yes.
Nope.
Right. You're basically
that is, I would say, more common than
okay.
any kind of extreme response.
I totally agree with you there. Because it's the I feel like to use a cruder like metaphor, you're basically getting naked in front of the person.
Right.
And if you do not have their permission or they did not expect it or whatever, they are very quickly going to either turn away or take whatever like blanket or clothing that there is and throw it over you, right?
Yes.
Because it's this is not proper. You know.
Usually people don't just immediately start conversations with the getting naked, basically.
Yeah, and it is very freeing when you do.
Oh, it is.
Like,
totally.
I love doing that with people where it's like, okay, let's talk about the most traumatic thing that ever happened to us. You know, and it's like
I'm an exhibitionist in that regard.
Yeah.
I mean, I've made jokes about being that in terms of like
more of an actual exhibitionist.
And then I think we should all be exhibitionists in probably a lot of ways. But I think
with regards to emotional vulnerability, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, but in the non-physical area and stuff like that, I feel like there is there's basically just one question to be asked. May I be vulnerable with you for a little bit?
Sure.
That's really quick, I would say.
Yep.
Most people will take a little bit of time, but I would say that I think it's mature, actually, when someone comes at you and immediately goes into emotional vulnerability that you are not ready or prepared for. It is mature of you to tell them, whoa, I don't want to hurt you here, but I am not prepared to have this conversation right now.
I am not a surgeon. Don't go lying down on my operating table.
Exactly, exactly. I'm not on the clock right now. I'm not ready.
This room isn't sterilized. Like,
exactly. Let's change the environment. Let's change the time. Let's prepare for this.
Yep.
And this is not just for me, but I am telling you at it from the standpoint of primarily for me. I think it is disingenuous, if that's not a word.
I think
it is not genuine. Let's just use that more basic way. It is not genuine to say that you're doing this just for them.
Right.
The primary way probably is that you're doing this for you. So that's why I wanted to bring up this bit here where Hiratsuka then says, struggle, writhe, agonize, go over this. Go take some time and wrestle with this.
Yep.
Because I know you're going to, but I'm also going to encourage you to do it because if not, what you're going through right here isn't genuine.
It's kind of an ultimatum. Like
She's kind of saying, you don't have to be emotionally vulnerable here with me.
But if you want to be emotionally vulnerable, like with maybe them or whatever, or with yourself, then go do it.
Go. Yeah. Like now or never.
Yep.
Go. And
there is no time like the present.
Right.
That's all we ever have.
What she's basically saying is, I can't help you anymore with this right here.
Right.
So I need you to, like, if you want to have this, work, go back to a safe environment where you can writhe, struggle, agonize, and go through everything here. Because I think what she's doing here, she's realizing, obviously I'm not going to try and get him to cry or do any kind of like emotionally vulnerable things right here.
But have a dark night of the soul.
Exactly. And that sets up really well
what comes later.
What comes later. And of course, he would give the contradiction of, well, but you can't call something genuine just because it makes you suffer, which is like, of course that's true. Of course that's true. Yeah.
Well,
but
or rather, it feels like that is the inverse of that, I would say, is true.
Sure.
That you can't tell whether something is true or not, or genuine or not, based on whether it makes you suffer.
Yeah.
But if it makes you suffer, how can it not be genuine, right? Like it's,
Yeah. Okay. He enters. We're skipping the Mind Palace time because we all know that's just...
It happens. It's great.
Happened.
I love
it. He did it.
Yeah.
Good job, man. He didn't wake up Kamachi or anything, but he comes in
and he sits down
opposite them. It's an entirely different chair. I want to make a request. I love that he's saying this from the standpoint of like, I'm not a part of this club. I knocked on the door. I need your help as the service club. I am not a member of the service club. I'm coming in to ask for the service club's help, just like a regular person would. But they're like, oh wait, this is a bit odd here. I want help with the Ishiki situation, with the Iroha situation. I screwed up. It's my fault. Remember the grade schoolers as well? I want to help her out too. Yep, I know I'm being presumptuous here, but I like your help. So he's basically saying, what I'm doing here has the potential to make you guys hurt even more. Because I am asking you guys to help the guy who, because of my actions specifically around the thing that I helped you with, hurt you.
Yep.
So now he waits patiently for their response.
Like, I hurt you to the point that you Yukino, specifically asked me, you know, in your own polite way, to stop coming.
Yep.
Right?
And so she rejects him. Don't you think you might, you know, you should do this on your own because this is something that you you did here? And now he is being vulnerable here, but he is not at the point where he's ready to be truly emotionally vulnerable yet. But he is letting what they did hurt him here.
Exactly.
So he then stands up in pain. Sorry, forget I asked. And then Yui falls into old patterns here and is just like, wait, no. This isn't, you know, this isn't the way things should go. No. You guys aren't being fair. You've both got it all wrong. And then this is the part here that I love they got into here. Yui kind of started to screw this up a little bit here.
Really? Because I don't think so.
No. I think she's being vulnerable here, but she very kind of quickly just kind of goes, yes, there are other people to blame here, but it's not about blame. She's focusing too much on like who's responsible for the blame for all this here. And I think that it led to a very good bit here in that she was comfortable sharing with Yukino that, yeah, you were being unfair, which is true.
Yep.
But it's a thing of where she's not necessarily seeing this from Yukino's perspective. She's trying to maybe be more just defensive regarding
Hachiman?
Regarding Hachiman, yeah. Because she does like him a lot.
Yes,
so
right.
Her bias is showing out here a little bit.
She is defensive of him, for sure.
Yeah.
So...
but this starts the communication track.
Right,
so
it starts the communication.
It's really important.
And that's... So, This is one of the reasons that I love Yui as a character, is that she makes things happen. She makes things happen.
Yeah.
And with the other two main characters, in Yukino and Hachiman, they are both incredibly stubborn, right? Their blind spots are not complementary, right? They they'll and it's on display here.
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Right? Hachiman does the thing that is him doing the thing that he would never have done before, right? Right? The thing that Yukino wanted him to do. Now, Yukino is not willing to accept it because of the things that have happened before. She's the one being Hachiman now, right? Like she's doing all the things that Hachiman would do. Yui calls it out, right? And that's why I really like it. That's why I think that what Yui did here absolutely was not potentially ruining it.
Right, but
she's hurting them though.
Yeah,
she's hurting them.
But I would say that what you can clearly tell here is she is trying to make Hachiman feel better. She is not necessarily thinking about this in the way of which Yukino is perceiving this. So she doesn't take responsibility for what she did. She just kind of said herself in there to kind of, I'm a part of this, so therefore I was somewhat responsible.
Well, I mean, she doesn't focus on her own blame, yeah, for sure. But she does mention it.
Yeah. But that's I would say that's the bare minimum to be mature about this, I would say.
Yes, but the issue here is not about her response to Hachiman's vulnerability. It's Yukino, because Yukino specifically is trying to then pin the blame on Hachiman and doing the thing of saying, hey, yes, I know that you are asking for something that you kind of like you.
Yeah, but she's not beholden to help him.
No, absolutely not. Right, and that's why it's important that Hachiman is actually doing this, and that's why it's important that she
rejected him.
That she rejected him, but also that she ends up, at eventually, or not. Yeah, it's important that she rejects him. Yeah. Right, and then it's important that that the conversation does not end there.
Well, yeah, that's why Yui's bit of being like, whoa. It didn't end there though. All he had done was just stand up and say, well, I'm sorry I asked. He might have left. he might have left, but this is the thing about urgency. Just because he might have left there doesn't mean things would have been irreparably done, that nothing would have changed. Now, because we have the context of knowing how things went so much better because they were willing to stick it out through the pain, talk about things that hurt the other person, and went through their own kind of cycle of bringing out the emotional vulnerability, then leading to Hachiman's emotional vulnerability, we can't disregard the fact that it wasn't about making sure that everything got done correctly on the first try.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But so do you get though the reasoning behind why I think that what Yui did was so important? Because
of course, yeah, definitely.
Because in this situation here, Hachiman did something that the odds of him doing this were stacked against him, right? And this only happened after his whole dark night of the soul. I will stay up all night thinking about this and screw my courage to the sticking place and all of that stuff, and then it comes up and does this. Yukino immediately gives the rejection of it, which is, it's important for Hachiman to work through that, to sort of push through that rejection, right? Because this is something that he does not deserve. In the situation that he is in, he is coming in as the outsider, so getting that rejection is helpful, right? Because then it's are you actually going to stick to this decision, Hachiman, right?
Yeah.
You need to let this become a pattern. But Hachiman is also imperfect, right? He is limited, and he has gotten to this point where he is able to do this. But I fully believe that if Yui hadn't done anything, Hachiman would have left, and he would have been like, okay, I guess that's what it is.
Right, because he was about to be emotional vulnerable, and he basically was like, I mean, well, he was being somewhat emotionally vulnerable, but he hadn't hit that point where it was a new threshold for him entirely.
Right.
And he wouldn't have been comfortable doing that unless he had breached the gap a little bit with this initial line of questioning with regards to help. Now, I think that Yui and her strength here is that she is the glue. She is keeping things from being too reactionary. It, in some ways, keeps them here. But that doesn't necessarily get things done. All that does is it makes the problem be brought up to the surface. Now, I am just arguing that what she is showing here is her own biases being brought up because of her focus being more on Yukino, which Yukino's response is the thing that is causing him to potentially leave. However, the means in which they do it is hurtful towards the other person, so that they can bring out their own emotional vulnerability. But what she's doing here is also trying to potentially play it the safest on her emotional vulnerability side of things. She has not joined in the crew yet by doing something that is as vulnerable as what they're doing. Like, it would hurt Yukino a lot to reject Hachiman here, but also she knows it would hurt Yui a lot for her to reject Hachiman here.
Well, and that's why I think that Yui is actually being vulnerable here. Now,
I'm not saying that she's not. I'm saying that she's being way less vulnerable.
Sure, and you could argue that, of course, it's going to be that way because her and Hachiman, or her and Yukino, weren't the ones that actually had the tiff, right? She didn't tell Hachiman not to come back anymore, right? Yukino did that, so of course the most vulnerability that will need to happen is between the two of them. But Yukino is not being vulnerable here. The fact that she rejects him, that's fine. But Yui is basically saying, yeah, but if you're going to reject him, you're going to need to be vulnerable while doing it. So I'm going to jeopardize my own friendship with you, which is a big deal because they are very close, and Yui doesn't have a lot of super close friends, right? Yeah, Yukino is her closest friend, right?
That's how it's a big deal that she said something negative about Yukino here.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I got you. We're on the same page here. Okay. Now, they talk about how things need to be said out loud in order for, things to be communicated. And then Hachiman drops this. Sometimes you can't get through to people even if you spell it out.
And that's
this is the point where I think that's been the pain of Yui all this time. Is that she has been trying to communicate things, but she knows
that even if she says it out loud,
that even if she says things out loud, that it wouldn't be taken at face value. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't have the response that she wanted, basically. So she doesn't say anything. And then he admits it. I probably wouldn't accept anything anyone said at face value. This broke my heart because I knew this about Hachiman. And yet I've tried so many times throughout the show to kind of give him a pass at times because of things regarding how it could be taken in those other ways. And that's been kind of the point of every other character in the show through Hachiman's lens, is that he immediately perceives them slightly wrong. He does not perceive everyone correctly. And because of that habit of, like you said, reading between the lines and thinking they have ulterior motives, he's right a lot of the time. But they do have ulterior motives. What those motives are, why they have those motives, the things regarding that like emotional thing that he's still like wrestling with understanding. No, usually completely off about like that stuff. So here he's being vulnerable with acknowledging that that's his blind spot here. So yeah, what's up?
Oh, no, I think all of what you're saying is really good.
Okay. Yeah. So then Yui's like, okay, but if they were perfectly straight with you, if we talk to you more, and this is the part again of where I understand Yui's frustration here, but this is the kind of thing where he's literally showing her how he can say something out loud directly to them and almost immediately miss the point right after saying it. She's talking about how if they did more, like if we like say, okay, you know, if you you know, if they were perfectly straight with you, if we talk to you more, like no guys, that's not what I'm trying to say. And then he just goes off. It's arrogant to think just saying things out loud is enough. Self-gratifying on part of the speaker and conceited on the part of the listener. Like I cannot tell you how much I wish I understood this 10 years ago. Like,
oh yeah,
this is. There are so many people, I'm sure, who watched this anime for the first time, or watching this anime for the first time now, or rewatching this anime and realizing how like wise this is. But the idea that you won't always come to an understanding by talking things out. There are ways in which you can be as forthcoming as possible, but because people do not perceive things directly as they are or as intended, they go through a filter. It takes time. Communication is not a passing of information. It is a stream. It is a flow. It is a constant thing that requires lots of time. And I remember multiple times being so impatient about the idea of communication being something that people either weren't like seeking understanding, so it was a thing of where they would just do a one and done. And I'd be like, well, like, come on, like, why aren't we like constantly going back and forth in this? Or I gave you everything, why are you not getting it yet? Like, oh my God, this is so just amazingly valuable for anyone that's dealt with the kind of stuff that Hachiman's dealing with.
Yeah. Yes, it is. This show and the things that its characters grapple with are... You can't make this up. Right? Like, there's... I don't know if any of you have heard the saying, but write what you know. It's common advice for people that want to make stories and whatnot. But these kinds of struggles, like I can almost guarantee you that these are struggles that the creator probably dealt with at some point because of how well they understand this. Right? Yeah, very much so. Because this like.
They understand it that well. I don't know if they experienced it necessarily, but
sure. Yeah, they are much more likely to have understood it through experience than simply by contemplating it or whatever. I agree. Right? Yeah.
I think the formula of a couple things in this show in general also comes into a really strong focus here. Hachiman's monologues in his own mind at the end of the episodes, you know, just in the show as a whole, are usually some of the best like moments where we get to understand a little bit more about his character because it's usually a genuine thought.
Sure.
But this is a moment where he's both speaking and not speaking in this moment here. this stuff that he gives here, where he's thinking about basically the whole feeling that he had there when he starts being vulnerable, and they perk up and they start listening to him, and he's stammering. He's like, but I, and then he goes, there was something I desired all along, a mutual understanding, companionship, and the like. And he starts going off and off and off and off here,
showing all the other characters.
Yeah. This is not something he's saying. This is a thought. This is something that he is thinking here. This is one of his end of episode thinking monologues here, where he's come to a realization of sorts.
Yep.
But usually the episode ends after he's had the monologue in his own head.
Sure.
But he comes to a realization that that desire that he had because of fear, you know, because being in the dark terrifies him, that all that was just something that was despondent, it was despicable, it was disgusting, it makes him sick to his stomach to think about. But if it's at all possible to share that desire, it's possible to have a relationship where you're free to burden one another with that repulsive self-gratification. I know that it's out of the question. I know that it's out of my reach. Even so. And then he speaks. I want something genuine. Yep. Now, this is perfect because for us, the audience, this is why we get it in this way. We get to have the full picture there.
Right.
But for all of them, he sat there for a few seconds, however long that was, with his thoughts there, and just stammered out, but I want something genuine. That's basically all he said.
Yeah.
But because he showed them his emotions in what led up to that, they were primed to perfectly receive exactly what he was saying there. They won't get it perfectly.
Right. And that's why, like, Yukino, it's like that hurt, and now I'm going to run away, because, of course they don't understand it, but they know that the emotion behind it is real. Is genuine, right?
Yeah.
And that's the, hold on.
Yep.
Hold on.
And
I don't know if I'm ready to handle this.
Yep.
And then, of course, she leaves, right?
That is so realistic. That is so realistic. I would say that this 50-50 response here, Yui of the, we have to go, we have to make this happen. I received it, yes. She's in love with him. Yukino brought up, well, basically with her talk out in the snow and everything, she brought this conversation to bear. She was the instigator for that in the same way that Hiratsuka was the instigator to resolving it.
Right.
Like, she began it with the bit there.
And Hiratsuka finished
in a response to Hachiman's actions over the last, bit of time. But Hiratsuka then brought this to here, and now he's demanding a response of sorts.
Yep.
That is very hard. That is very difficult to respond in a way where if you care about the person, which I believe not only does she care about Hachiman, but she likes Hachiman.
Oh, Yukino?
Yukino, absolutely.
If she didn't, it wouldn't be complicated.
Well,
like,
yeah. I have a thing I want to share after this, and that's the story that I've been building up to here, is that it can absolutely be complicated, even if you don't like the person.
Gotcha.
It can be really painful. So, with Hachiman here now getting this, oh, okay, I did it. But, oh, wow, that was tough. And then Yui grabbing him, being like, we gotta do this, let's go. You can feel this just weight that's either been lifted on him or now he's wrestling with, and that's the agonizing. He's now like in the emotion of it, and it hurts. She left. But then he's like, okay, she holds his hand, and I got scared for a second because he pulled away.
Right.
But then he's like,
nope.
I can do this myself.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant way to write it.
Yep.
Because it gives us the catharsis of that he's going to do this, but it's also the fact that he kind of was like, no, this is my emotion. I was vulnerable here.
I know that this is something that is not normal for me, and I know that you want to be helpful. Right. That's okay. I am at the point where this is me.
This is me. Yeah.
This is me.
Yeah. That's so good for him. That's like such huge development for his character. Yep. Because it's not him pushing away out of fear of her niceties or her nice girl kind of like, I'm trying to support you kind of thing, and he's scared
grabbing
of being
hold of something
manipulated
else
or something. Yeah. So I have had the emotional vulnerability experience where I had the process get sidetracked. So what ends up happening is you have the person respond because the emotion is so genuine in a way that is absolutely like genuine in response. Emotional vulnerability, connection, understanding, it's fantastic. The thing is, though, is that things aren't just a one and done situation there.
Right.
There is a process that then starts at that point. And it is regarding the stewardship of the emotions and the event and the whole thing that was shared from that point. But one of the most painful things that can come about from those emotionally vulnerable points is that if you're not mature enough then to steward the connection, not just because you were emotionally vulnerable, but because they responded in an emotionally vulnerable way, there's a lot more communication, a lot more just general back and forth that needs to come about because of that. But I have been in the spot where I was the immature one and did not follow up properly, did not basically steward the bit there. And they did really like, care, you know, it's a whole mess of emotions where they're very intimate and genuine about the connection, but things can still pull apart because of little things done over the course of time. So things can lead to dramatically wonderful crescendos. It's kind of like the idealism of the kiss at the end of the romance movie or story or show or whatever. And then just like, yeah, and then things were just wonderful after that.
Right.
It's like, that's not, that's like math-wise, that's also rarely how it goes down anyway.
Yeah.
Like, it usually, you're going to go through some shit, like, eventually. And most relationships in general don't end in a permanent, you know, just kind of, everything.
And they lived happily ever after.
Yeah. Most of these relationships, of these romance stories also are for when the characters are a lot younger, so it's even more likely that they're going to eventually split up again later. But I would say that often you can track back some of these falling apart, like these ways that things fall apart, because of how the emotional vulnerability was stewarded by the other party afterwards.
Gotcha.
Because it can set a precedent or expectations regarding certain things. Now, I want to bring up here that there is a very seriously, and I am so high over the moon right now with what's happening with Hachiman specifically, that I can't see this happening in the immediate sense. But I could very easily see expectations being played, or not played, but put upon this engagement here, that if some of the underlying issues that, you know, weren't all entirely addressed that led to this point being what was necessary, you know, it was a now or never situation, that this kind of thing won't repeat itself exactly, but this thing is not just suddenly magically resolved because of that. So
as a maybe layman's terms for it.
Totally.
Basically that because there's been all this emotional vulnerability between these characters, they are much more willing to extend a helping hand, be gracious when with the mistakes that have already been made.
Yeah.
However, that is something that they were originally, in the case of Yukino, not willing to do. And it was the vulnerability that made them willing to do this, right? If Hachiman does not show afterwards that he has learned, right, in the long term, right? If he goes back to old habits, then it hurts even more. Because then it's you feel manipulated, that they just were vulnerable as a way to get the result they wanted. You know, that when you were vulnerable in response to their vulnerability, that they didn't actually care about that. You know, like all sorts of other things.
And again, these are all part of the process.
Exactly.
This is not something, again, where it's suddenly now over.
Right.
Because of that.
Because it's not a question of whether or not Hachiman will fall into old habits. I mean, for the sake of the narrative, he might not here because, you know,
not immediately.
Not immediately, and limited number of episodes, so keeping things, you know, more linear, concise, to the point, whatever. You know, who knows how the show wants to do it.
There's a lot that they pack into each episode. So.
Yes, that is very, very true. But that when there are those moments of going back into old patterns that it's acknowledged on both parties, right?
Yep.
And then dealt with in a different way than it was previously.
Yeah, it's that awareness and it's that willing to communicate and show the vulnerability in the midst of the things that are happening that aren't fun, comfortable, or enjoyable. Now, I love that Yukino is the first one to ask the question here. What exactly do you mean by genuine?
Right, because there is still a lack of trust here, right? It's a thing of the no. You don't get to try and be vulnerable now after everything that's happened when you've had so many chances. Right. Now you're wanting to be vulnerable. Okay, let's start laying out some ground rules. Let's like start defining this thing that you said here, because I need to make sure that I've got all the I's dotted and T's crossed for my own sake.
Yeah, but that is also the very dangerous response for killing this whole thing here. And Yui basically stops her before she can even give any of that. Yeah. Which is no. We can get to that eventually.
Right.
But just get this. I don't understand it either. The fact that this, I think, was probably the moment where she saved the whole thing. I think Yui basically saved the whole thing before the paladin could open her big mouth, basically, here. Is that she's saying, we'll take time to get it right.
Yeah.
But that's the three of us. That is not something that's just going to be you and Hachiman. It's not something that's just going to be me and you. It's not something that's just going to be Hachiman.
And it's not something that's just going to be you.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about getting it. It's not about understanding it right. It's not about any of that. That might come eventually.
But we'll keep working on it.
We'll spend our days trying to figure it out. Not so that we can figure it out, but it's the awareness of that. It's the effort of it.
You never get to a point in a relationship where it's just like, all right, the relationship's good, and you just don't have to spend any more time on it. It's the no. You keep working at a relationship. Like that's how those things go.
Yeah. This bit as well, where she's got her big emotional vulnerability moment where she's like, because I hate the way things are right now.
Right. Which I love it, because it's that vulnerability there. It's the call of distress that gives the paladin the courage to be like, okay, my wounds aren't that bad, right? Like all right,
or wait, your wounds are that bad? Like,
oh yeah, right, yeah.
That's what's like. Why are you crying?
Right. Yeah, I didn't realize, and then she starts crying with her, and there's the whole line that I love so much of. What is it? After Yui starts crying and she's like, "Oh, you're really playing dirty." Because it's the I cannot reject this. I cannot argue with this. Because Yui already is in that place of strong connection and vulnerability with Yukino, even if they're not actively being vulnerable with each other, right? Because they care about each other that much. And Yukino just did the thing of, I'm going to distance myself from Hachiman because this is becoming a problem for me, right? So his vulnerability doesn't necessarily cut as deep, and that's why it's scary, because he's saying, will you let me in again, right? But with Yui, then it's just, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, shit.
And this is the burden, basically, that Hachiman wants to be able to give to them.
Right.
Which he kind of did for the first time.
Right.
And, bro.
I accept your request.
Yeah.
Your lifesavers.
She's basically saying, yeah, I'll bear a bit of that. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And your lifesavers. Now, Iroha, I like that the show decided to scare us for a little bit with the
no. He's too busy. No, not now.
We get it. But right now we've got a thing we've got to deal with here.
And I love that was another bit of resistance that Hachiman was able to overcome. Of like, nope, not now. And then she's like, no, she's upstairs. She's on the roof, and it's like, okay.
Do you think she was listening in?
I think she might have been. I think there's a decent possibility that, maybe. I
just want to show you the way that, like, she kind of reacted in a very, like, surprising way when everything was there. Now she wasn't there when the door was open. Like, we didn't see her.
Right, so it's not like she was, like, right outside the door.
Right. But I wouldn't think she would be based on how someone would listen in.
Yeah, more like the leaning against the wall next to the door.
Yep. And then she would just run past and not even necessarily see her. But then she hears all of this of them going into this here potentially. And when Hachiman opens the door, she's got that like frozen solid. She's not walking towards the door.
Yeah.
It's her like, should I knock? This seems like a bad time. And that's also she was the one kind of asking a bit, well, was it her or Kaori?
About what?
Of relationship potentially with any of the other girls in the service club.
Oh, I think that might have
more Kaori.
I think that might have been both, depending on the context and the way they asked about it and things like that.
Because Iroha asks it in a very different way than Kaori does.
She has her very specific language.
Yes. But the fact that Yukino ran out in that way, she definitely saw that because she said it. And she also knows which direction she went as well. So she watched her all the way until she went up some stairs.
Yep.
But that means she stayed there from that point when Yukino ran out to this door here.
Yeah, like theoretically, she could have been coming down the hall and saw her running out, and then went up the stairs, and then was
then made it here right at the point when.
Yeah, but
it's just a
probably not.
She probably heard some of this. So there's a possibility that Iroha kind of likes Hachiman.
Oh yeah, I mean that's been the case for a while now. Her rejections of the advances that didn't happen,
ridiculous and silly, if you will, or not even fully rejections. So. At this moment here, do you think she had her feelings hurt?
Sure. And it's on point with the whole thing of Hyatsuka of you hurt people without even realizing it. Even after you die.
Just by existing.
Right, just by existing. Yep.
So
ain't it beautiful, the thing we call life?
I thought this was a really smart way to just hint at the ways in which Hachiman's actions here might have hurt her. In a way that it might take him a while to realize.
Sure.
But she's probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like a way in which you can hurt someone without meaning to, without having any knowledge that they're even in the blast radius of your ignition, basically.
Right.
But they're going to be okay. Everything's going to be daijoubu,
Right.
Now, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, and what it looks like,
season 2 and season 3 also to get into.
That's the crazy thing about this show is that the episodes are just so jam-packed. Like the fact that, if
so much drama.
Oh my god. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Final thing.
Oh,
he calls Iroha a lifesaver.
Oh.
For pointing out the
whole thing of her being on the roof?
Yeah. Now, I think this is something that might be reading into this way too much. I think this is just a shorthand thing of, I really, genuinely appreciate you helping me here.
Yep, which is the same thing he said to Yukino
at the end
of the
episode.
End when she's like, I accept your request. Yeah.
Accept your request. I'll help too. You're a lifesaver.
Yeah, your lifesavers. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Plural. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I really think that he not only genuinely means that, but I think that there's a reason why he chose that word as opposed to just thank you very much or just any other kind of shorthand. There's so many synonyms for kind of what he's getting at here.
Hachiman is not the kind of person to exaggerate for the most part.
Yes.
So that word was chosen intentionally.
Yeah.
And let me know what you think. I would posit that it's because, well, he feels like he's been dead up till now. And now he's actually deciding to start to live.
Yeah, I love that interpretation. Yeah. I don't know the interpretation. I just think that there's a couple ways in which you could take it. And
all of them are strong.
All of them are really strong.
Yeah.
All of them betray intention behind these words, basically. They feel
Hachiman
really,
didn't casually say that.
Yeah. Instead of being like, that's really helpful, or that's,
thank you, I owe you one,
Yeah, exactly. If anything, it felt like the most matter-of-factual, just kind of quick, but bam.
Yep.
And it's honest, and that just means so much because we haven't even seen these eyes on Hachiman before.
No.
You know how Hachiman's like eyes have always been like a point that makes him different from all the other characters. Like he has the
sort of.
Yeah, he has the very like specific kind of scary black-haired protagonist who's like, no one likes me that much.
On the top.
Yeah, exactly. Extremely tiny pupils.
Yep.
Like, but this moment here, this was probably the most pain we've seen him in.
The bottoms of his pupils were getting cut off in this one. Yeah.
Like, oh, I love it because then when he then says the bit to Yui of like, no, I've got this. We see that he hasn't really changed that much of the look, except that I don't think we've ever seen him so close to fear, I think is what I'm meaning here.
Oh, sure.
One of the things that
You can't let things end with loose ends like this.
Yeah, I think that what we see here when Yui is trying to grab him and be like, let's go, is that any new energy that comes into his environment here, he's in new territory with regards to that, so he doesn't know what damage could be done.
Right.
So it's not that he's actively scared right now, but he's scared of how things potentially could go.
Right.
So
he's opened up the hermetically sealed vault, and his immune system for emotional pain is very low.
Yeah. And thus, there's the moment where she actually like grabs his hand, and we see him almost kind of get a resolved look for a little bit there. And then he kind of like turns down, and we see the nice little bags under his eyes with regards to the tears and the emotional stuff.
The discoloration.
But we see almost like this brow furrowing of, all right. But then his eyes are a little bit more open, just like, okay, let's go.
Well, his eyes look a lot more similar to the way his eyes look most of the time in the show.
Yeah.
And what I love about this is that then it's the integration, right?
Yep.
Because until then
he's replacing his old self.
Right.
It's dying entirely.
Yeah. And before then it was chaotic, and it's the I don't know what is this stuff, right? But then it's the Yui's like, come on, we gotta go, and he's like, wait.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Right.
Let's go.
I don't know if he breathed like a specific time, like just to be like, oh, I got this. But there was something that took my breath away, in that it was timed with her like grabbing his hand and worrying.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, I think she thought he was about to pull away. And I was so wrapped up in the scene, I thought he was going to too.
Yeah, because this is new territory for him, right? He's never gotten to this point. Yui doesn't know what to expect, and he's pulled away long before he's ever gotten near this point in the past. But screw the courage to the sticking place. Let's go.
Let's go. I am so excited for the next like episodes, but I have to be like perfectly honest here. My excitement is so high because in some ways my fear is also like equally high.
Oh, isn't it nice to live dangerous like that? Yeah.
Like, it's just the idea of like, I'm vulnerable now. I'm like emotionally vulnerable in a way that I haven't been with this show. And now I'm like, oh no. I think what it is, what it is personally, is I feel like there was a point in this episode where I almost inserted myself a little bit too much into Hachiman.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I cried so much. It was something where I recognized something that I had messed up in the past, and I saw that in Hachiman there, and I was like,
gotcha.
Oh shit. And it just hit me. But because of that, I think now I'm looking at his situation and I'm like, wait, can he do it? Can he do it here? So now I'm like scared, because if he can't do it, I'm like, that's gonna hurt me personally. But like, if he can do it, I'm gonna be over the moon excited.
That's why I'm so excited and like not worried. I feel like because you've got the lift off. You're good. Your drill will pierce the heavens. Go fly. Like this is you've got that momentum behind you now, and
that simple.
And now right. You had your moment, right? Yosha. Now let's go. Like this is where the fun begins. Like
I am so scared because of like Haruno, for instance. Haruno could give like 7 words and kill this whole thing. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, that's the kind of paranoia my brain is like just at the edge of, and I'm like, no, this is a win. This is humongous. This is crazy. Like,
I want Haruno to see
this. Like, a girl
this.
could confess to him in the next few episodes, and it could completely spiral things out.
Maybe, but at the same time, in this moment, bulletproof, 10 foot tall. Like I want Haruno.
Not realistic, though.
Want Haruno to see this.
Yeah.
Just so that Hachiman has the chance to prove himself. Just to have that challenge.
Yeah.
Like, he's got this. He's got this.
I hope so.
So,
I hope so.
This episode was so freaking good.
Okay, you know what I want, though, on the positive side, though?
Oh, yeah? Yeah?
I want a Komachi Hachiman dance party in the living room.
Yeah.
Where they're, like, fist pounding the ceiling and just going crazy.
She's like, woo, let's get the cocoa. Like, you know.
And he's just like,
I'm 12,
okay,
so, you know,
like,
it can't be alcohol or anything.
Right, but, like, him also being like, yeah. And she's like, why aren't you moving? And
she puts on, like, really loud, like, energetic music.
But then he, like, just kind of collapses on the chair, just like, I'm still processing this.
Meanwhile, she's like pounding his back, like, yeah!
I give you so many points right now.
Right.
So many
All
points.
the points.
All the points.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all. This was a hell of a thing. So, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this episode's reaction and discussion. This discussion was ridiculously long.
Yeah.
But, so
we love this
worth
show.
It. So worth it.
This show so
this
much.
episode also, in combination with some of the last few episodes, did me in. Like,
I'm gone, man.
Solid gone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anything else you want to say?
Okay. There was a little bit of me that was like, now I know that the main conflict was between Yukino and Hachiman here. But the fact that it's like, all right, and Yui's like, let's go chase after Yukino. There was a little part of me, even though I was over the moon because of so excited for Hachiman, there was that little part of me that died inside.
Yep. I could literally feel it, dude. I was like, oh, Jacob. Like, that's part of one of the things that I was, like, feeling really hard there. Like, oh. Yeah.
But here's the thing.
There's a lot of show left.
There's a lot of show left. There's almost half of the show left. And
how many episodes are in season 3? Isn't it shorter than?
Oh, is it?
Usual?
I don't know. I'm assuming it's one cour and that we're just a little bit past the halfway point of season 2 and 2/3, but whatever. Like, a lot of stuff can happen there, so I'm still believing that it could happen. Because Hachiman's in a really good place now, so as far as we know, all the territory's gone. The thing that was holding Yui back, especially Hachiman, admitted to himself and to them and confronted it. So there is a very good possibility that that territory goes in a completely different direction.
God, I was so happy that happened.
Yeah.
So, y'all. Yeah, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get on early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access. You can chat with us and the community there about this show, about anime in general. And also, be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.